merciful, who is also the source of peace. Today's talk is on trade wars and who the real victims are of trade wars between nations, especially great nations. Trade wars can have many forms, which ban whereby the United States is trying to force China to open up its and and uh, also other demand the tariffs on imported goods from China. China is the factory of the world, including the United States. Chips could be designed and then sent to a factory in China for production, and then those once produced is brought back to the US to be sold by US companies also, basically outsourcing its manufacturing to China because of low cost, because China has almost absolute advantage in terms of cost due to cheap electricity and cheap labor, which makes manufacturing in China to be more cheaper than manufacturing in the United States. So, also to protect one of the reasons was to protect U.S. industry from cheap Chinese imports, something which are produced both in China and in the United States, but the Chinese produced items would be significantly cheaper, even though they traveled through and included the cost of freight, insurance, and duties. Still they remain cheaper, including Americans were used to cheap Chinese electronics, white goods like washing machines, ovens, microwaves, cookers, refrigerators, stoves, name it, almost everything, including cars. At one point of time, America was the leader in electric cars production, but now China is the world's biggest producer of electric vehicles. Even Elon Musk, Tesla, they do the design work, and some of the Tesla cars are manufactured in the Chinese plant because of the advantage China has over the US in terms of cost of electricity, cost of labor, and also regulations. However, a trade war between China and the US, forcing China to respect intellectual property and open up the Chinese system, because in China you cannot really Okay, Chinese companies, Chinese individuals cannot open bank accounts in US dollars or in US banks. Even banks cannot do that unless they pass through the official government channels. This is to protect capital flight from China. Chinese are good savers, and China wants the money saved in China by Chinese workers, Chinese individuals, to remain in China and not flee to these in speculative markets like the United States. So it keeps that money there, so they cannot. So it helps also fund the Chinese industry. Chinese savings pump up and support Chinese industry. Capital is available, locally generated, and hence China is one of the countries with actually no debt, unlike the US, which has external debt from investors from almost all over the world, including China, this official government, Japan, India, all those with their trade, and the Gulf, all those countries with trade surpluses end up investing their excess dollars in US government, treasury bonds, and treasury bills. And in the American stock exchange, which gives the American stock exchange a higher valuation than it is than the fundamentals allow or the inherent value of the shares of American companies are. So what happens in the trade war is that taxes which the American government collects by charging surcharges, and it was actually a tariff-based trade war to make Chinese goods more expensive. Who suffers? It is the American working class public, who are the main buyers of Chinese electronics, Chinese vehicles, Chinese white goods, which they use in the homes, home appliances, and those things, microwaves, toasters, cookers, ovens, washing machines, dryers. And these days, what do you call the PlayStation machines, and all those things are made in China. So the price, because of the increase in tariffs, the price increases. So who is the actual culprit victim? It is the working class American. Yes, a trade war is a class war by the bourgeois, the rich people, the politicians, against the working class population of Americans. China will find a way out, as it did by finding alternative markets for its production. Today, at one point of time, the United States was China's biggest trade partner. It no longer is the case, nor is the EU China's biggest trading partner. It is the ASEAN countries and the other African countries in the south who have become China's biggest trade partners. The whole trade imbalance has changed. So, China found a way out, and China also increased or banned American goods and what not in national interest of China and what not. And those who suffered in China, who are used to buying American goods, were the people, ordinary people of China. and not the politicians and the working class and not the politicians. So the sufferers even in China in the trade war were the hard-working middle-class Chinese. The same thing scenario, similar scenarios play over all over the world. So trade wars are actually governments fighting its own population of working class people, of working class taxpayers, the hard-working people who drive industry. These are the people who pay taxes from the monthly payrolls, and also what the companies do. Because of the labor, they are able to make profits, and the profits are taxed by the American government and the government. So they have to get back their power to find governments and to vote for people who are anti-trade war or who believe in free trade and free enterprise. We hope that the Divine Supreme Being enlightens the leaders to refrain from tariff-based trade wars. Another example I would give in the south, in developing countries, is Kenya. In Kenya, at one time, it was we can say a trade war not against a company, but against a particular kind of uh, which are what we call locally mitumba, or which are used clothing and used items in from the US, Canada, United Kingdom, and the EU. Kenya's own textile industry had collapsed long time ago in the 80s. We had great industries like Rivertex, Kikomi, but they had all collapsed due to American sanctions, embargo, when they were anti against the second president, His Excellency Daniel Dorotich Arap Moi, who has since passed away. May God rest his soul in peace. The used clothing and whatnot came from these countries and was cheaper. So, ostensibly to protect local industry, which did not even have the raw material because people had stopped cotton farming or other farming, and the factories like to process ginnery, like Kitui ginneries, Lamu ginneries, had all collapsed, and so the Kikomi and the Rivatex factories to manufacture Kenyan textiles did not even have the raw material too. That is why these companies also collapsed. The whole supply chain, the value chain collapsed. So putting tariffs was only going to increase and make the goods cheaper, the cheaper goods to be more expensive for the local working class people, the hard-working people. The people who suffered were the local hard-working working class people who now had to stitch up the older mitumbas and whatnot, and mitumbas still continued coming in, finding other routes. So a trade war is always fought by a government against its people and not against another government or a particular class of imports. We ask for the Divine Supreme Being's blessings to bring economic prosperity to all countries of the world, and may the Hormuz crisis be dissolved through a comprehensive peace agreement and a Middle East Economic Union for all the 15 countries of the Middle East. Thank you.